This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
G'day, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation, and welcome to episode 2 of the WP Elevation Podcast. And I have with me here from the Matt Report, Matt Medeiros. Good evening, Matt.
Troy, thanks for having me, buddy. I really appreciate you invite me onto the show.
Absolute pleasure. And I was just saying before, it's kind of a little bit weird talking to you because I'm used to hearing your voice while I'm walking around the park in the morning, walking my dog, drinking my morning coffee, listening to the Matt Report podcast. So
that's awesome.
And you're on the other
awesome.
side of the interview this time. How's it feeling?
Hey, I'm on the other side of the world, and I'm on the other side of the interview. It's going to be tremendous.
Awesome. Hey, just before we get started talking about the Matt Report and all things WordPress, I just want to announce a competition. We're going to give away a Slocum Design WordPress theme valued at $60. Whatever theme you like, you can pick a theme from the Slocum Design theme shop, and we're going to give away a lifetime license of the Video User Manuals plugin, which is valued at $240 a year, and we're going to give you a lifetime license of that, which is just ridiculous. So stick around for details on how to enter the draw for that.
There's a slight pause, but we're still here.
We're back. We've got some Wi-Fi broadband stuff going on here because we're in Australia and we don't have a very good broadband network, but that's another issue for another episode. So, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So it's an interesting question. Growing up, my family ran an auto dealership, a local auto dealership. So I always fancied myself as following my father's footsteps. And doing the same thing. And I did that for all my life, really. I mean, it only took me till about 8 years old until I was forced into working at the family dealership. So it didn't take long for me to actually realize that kind of dream, and it's been a family business ever since.
Wow, cool. So when did you discover the World Wide Web and in all its glory?
Same thing. Back in the days of growing up, my father being in the auto dealership, it was first a Mazda dealership, and it was a General Motors dealership. So technology was something that we were always used to because the corporations always had like mainframe systems into our dealership, and back then they were literally taking up full rooms of computers. So I was in it at a very early age. I remember my dad had one of the first, I guess you would call a laptop. It was like the size of a tower with a handle, and it had a keyboard, a full QWERTY keyboard that popped off of it with a 7-inch glass monitor inside of it. It was crazy. So ever since I can remember hacking away at DOS, trying to get that thing to work. It's ever since I've been in it.
Wow. And when was the first moment you saw WordPress and realized that it was something that you wanted to play with?
So that's a much more serious story. That one fast forwards me all the way to my last career, which was working for an ISP, and I managed a Drupal team. We were an internet provider, but we also acquired a web development shop. So we had a Drupal team, and then the economy crashed worldwide, and people stopped paying us for Drupal, so we had to look for a lesser expensive alternative, and that's when I discovered WordPress.
Wow. So developing websites in Drupal just became too expensive for your clients, and so you were looking for a more efficient, cost-effective alternative, and that's when you discovered WordPress. Yeah,
it was a weird scenario too. This internet startup that I was working for, they were in business since like '99, but this was around 2006, 2000. No, it's the economy. So 2007, 2008, where we acquired this other company. They had a Drupal shop. I was the only guy that knew how to do things with like Linux and servers and installing software, and that's what I did. I was a product manager for that, and they were like, "Hey, run this Drupal team," and it was just like a whole new world of just managing developers, and we just had to find something that, like, we were struggling with Drupal. So we were like, we got to find something that's easier for us to manage and sell to these clients because this is a whole new territory for us. But back then, people were investing, I mean, for the most basic sites, like $25,000, $30,000 for basic sites, for stuff that you're like hard pressed to get $500 for today. Yeah. So money was like being thrown around at this stuff because you're like, we need to be on the web, but now it's very ubiquitous.
Yeah. So fast forwarding to today with Slocum Designs and Matt Report. How do you describe what you do in one sentence? What's the elevator pitch, so to speak?
So the Matt Report is what I dub the #1 WordPress business podcast. And Slocum Studio, the elevator pitch for that is a premium WordPress design and development shop. So two different things going on, but that's the elevator pitch for both of them.
And I notice in those elevator pitches that you've deliberately positioned both of those at the premium end of the market. The Matt Report is the world's #1 business WordPress podcast, and Slocum Designs is a premium WordPress design and development shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, intentionally. I don't like to get into the technicals because, again, I don't consider myself a developer or a designer. I'm just one of those guys that kind of has that little bit of skill, and I'm dangerous with some of it, but I don't get into it. So my focus for the Matt Report is strictly business and people and connecting with them. And then the studio is definitely premium. We're not a big shop like a 10up or a web dev studios, but we're not small like freelancers. It's a smaller team. I like to think of us like Instagram. A few guys working to build something awesome, and then hopefully have a valuation of $1 billion someday.
And Web Dev Studios come and buy you out, right?
That's it.
You heard it here
I'm not
first.
saying anything. I'm not saying anything.
So what do you spend most of your time actually doing day to day?
40% of the time is probably dedicated to project management of all the different projects that I oversee for all the WordPress service clients that we have, brainstorming new theme ideas or new plugin ideas, and just keeping a pulse on the design and dev teams. And then 20% is podcasting, 20% business development. Where am I? I got another 20% left. And 20% is left to the typical business stuff, legal stuff, tax stuff. Is the company healthy? Where are we headed? Where are things going? That kind of thing. Recruiting new people to be on the team, that kind of thing. But most of the day is project management, product development, and of course doing the podcast stuff.
So out of that mix, it sounds like you're juggling quite a few things throughout the day. What's the one thing that keeps you awake at night?
The one thing that keeps me awake at night is I guess it's that entrepreneurial thing that we all have. Like, are we headed in the right direction? I know we're going to probably get into it later. One of the questions might be like, what differentiates our themes to others' themes? And that's always on the mind of any entrepreneur, whether you're starting a cheeseburger shop or you're starting a WordPress shop. You're always wondering, is this the right thing? And that's really what keeps me up at night, and trying to find our voice and our little niche of why we're different.
Okay, so I'm just going to park that. I want to come back and revisit that in a minute. What do you do when you're not working?
Oh, man. Well, if you talk to my girlfriend, she would tell you that I just do not stop working. But what do I do when I'm not working? It's a great question. What do I do? I run. I like to run.
You can pass if you like. It's okay to pass.
Yeah. I run. I try to be healthy and work out, things like that.
Yep.
And just try to hang out with my friends and family and of course, my girlfriend.
Yep.
And just try to enjoy life and try to shut off.
Yeah.
The business stuff, which is something I'm actually focusing on more of lately.
How do you find? I was talking to Adi about from Woothemes about the running thing. He's a big advocate of like entrepreneurs should run because it's good for their head, it's good for their body, at least. How do you find running?
I interviewed Adi, and because of my failure to back stuff up when my laptop crashed, I lost the episode.
Oh, no.
We can talk about that later, but he and I see that in a very similar light where, and he talked about this, I forget what the word it was that he used for it, but there will be times where, especially during starting off right in the morning, you open up your to-do list, your email, you get all that stuff in front of you, and then in a few hours you find yourself just gazing at the computer.
Yeah.
And you're not even doing anything.
Yeah.
You're just like alt tabbing between windows, and you're just like clicking around, and you're like playing your next song on Spotify, and you're just thinking, and you're just like, wait, nothing is happening right now, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even being productive. And I've kind of trained myself that as soon as I realize that that's happening, shut the lid if I can, and just go for a run.
Yeah.
And that does, I mean, even if it's like a mile, just like stopping and getting the blood going helps tremendously.
Yeah. I've been running for the last few years, but the last probably 2 years really picked up the intensity and the frequency. And it's funny how you can convince yourself that you're being productive when you're sitting in front of the computer, but it's not until you're in the middle of a run that all these kind of problems solve themselves and all these great ideas come to the forefront, because you're away from the environment and you're away from that zone, and the blood's flowing and oxygen's going to the brain and you're thinking clearly.
Let me tell you something. We're in the wrong business, because we have to come up with some device that wraps around our wrist where we can take those notes and those audio notes. And I've seen them out there, but they just don't do it. They have like a little USB thing in there where you can kind of record yourself as you're running, but they're really cheap. And I'm telling you, that's something that we gotta invent.
Yeah,
Kickstarter, let's do it. $1 million.
Well, you heard it here first.
I mean, because you're absolutely right. When you're running and the blood's going and the endorphins are firing, like you are starting to think of, and that's when I do some of my best thinking.
Yep.
But then you have all these ideas, and again, the entrepreneur, you just start thinking, I can do this and we can do that, and then you forget them all by the time you're done running. You're like, damn.
Yeah.
Gotta go run again. See if I can remember.
So let's talk about the Matt Report just quick. I just want to touch on it now, and we'll come back to it in a little while. But why did you decide to start the Matt Report podcast?
So this is a great question, and it's one that's gotten me in trouble before, but I really don't care. So going to WordCamps, when somebody is starting to a WordPress company, whether it be freelance or you want to go to the agency model like I do, or you want to go big like a 10-up, you start going to WordCamps, you start getting involved with WordPress meetups, and you start to kind of realize that WordPress, as lovey-dovey as the community is, you start to find that there's a clear divide of the haves and the have-nots in the WordPress world. It's not a malicious thing, it's just human nature, right? This is what happens. I mean, WordPress is young, it's only 10 years old, but this is 10 years old of building what is almost like a democratic government, right, to build this product. So it's not to anybody's fault, it's not a malicious thing, it just happens, especially when it's an open source project with people working from all over the world. So I went to a few WordCamps and I saw this clear divide. And I didn't really do anything with it until I started getting more known in the WordPress world and quite honestly trying to land larger projects, and then realizing there's some red tape in the water here. So then I said, you know what, I'm going to start something that exposes these people, not in a bad way, but bring on people like Andrew Nason, whom I haven't brought on yet, but to show that these are real developers, right? These are real human beings, and they're just working to build a great product. So when people see these people out at WordCamps, they shouldn't be afraid to go up and talk to them. That's the other piece of the pie, was I saw all these people say, oh, there's Andrew Nason, there's JJJ. These guys are like revered developers, and they're awesome people, but people were actually afraid to talk to them.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to start something. I didn't know at the time it was going to be a podcast, but I'm going to start something that I can introduce these people to the folks who really want to meet them. And that's kind of how it came about.
So why did it become why a business podcast and not a technical podcast?
Excuse me, that's a great question too.
Thank you.
It's to the fact where I don't like to do things that I'm uncomfortable with. And I could do a technical podcast, and I'd rather leave that to like blogging, like some of the technical things that I can comprehend. But there are super smart people in the WordPress community that, like, I don't want to talk about custom post types. Like, that's about my knowledge, and then it stops, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand what technology we need to architect sites when we need them to surpass millions of page views a month. I certainly don't know how to execute it in the code base on the code level.
Sure.
So I don't get into the technicals. Business, marketing, and introducing people to other people is what I feel really comfortable doing. That's, I guess, one of the other things I spend probably 5% of my day on is networking for other people. Hey, one of my clients could really use your services, or introducing my clients to each other, or when I see somebody, posting a job opportunity, I say, hey, I know somebody that could actually fill that role, and I, hand it off to them. So that's what I'm comfortable with, and I knew I could do it without having to think about it. Whereas if I went technical, I'd have to think, okay, what am I going to cover today? 2-part series on such and such. Now, the flip side of that is I do put myself through that pain on the Slocum Studio side of the podcasting. So we do YouTube web shows, 3 a week, and those get a little bit more technical. So we do Press This, which compares themes and plugins to each other. We do SEO Lunch, which is web marketing stuff. And then we do Week in WordPress, which is a technical recap of WordPress headlines of the week. And that gets a little bit more technical. Gotcha.
So, I was listening to, I'm a Mixergy Premium member, and I love Mixergy. I'm kind of honing in a little bit more on WordPress, so I'm kind of listening to more and more WordPress podcasts. But there's one question that Andrew Warner asks a lot on Mixergy, and it's a question about self-doubt and the voices in your head that you have to deal with as an entrepreneur. And certainly one thing that I had to deal with when I started podcasting and putting myself out there and interviewing people and putting myself on video, especially in Australia, is there's a little bit of a kind of a tall poppy syndrome in Australia, whereas if you kind of stand out from above the crowd, everyone thinks you're a wanker and they just want to cut you down. So I kind of had to just get over that stuff and do it. But I'm curious, other people who have quite a public profile and do interviews and podcasts, did you have to kind of work through any of that kind of stuff and like, who the hell am I to run a podcast and who's going to tune in and who's going to want to be interviewed by Matt Medeiros from Slocum Design? How did you work through that?
Yeah, so I always say that everybody should try to sell cars for a living for at least a couple of years, right?
Yeah, right.
So I've never had, so how did I learn about sales and marketing? When I was 13 years old, my dad gave me a phone book and said, call these people, see if they want to buy a car. And that was it, right? And that was my foray into cold calling.
Wow.
So I've never had an issue going up to people, presenting myself. I did have some self-doubt with podcasting because I talk really low. I feel like I'm yelling. Like right now I feel like I'm yelling, but it's probably not coming in very loud. That's like the only self-doubt I ever had. Now, the self-doubt of running a WordPress podcast and clashing with these personalities has been an issue, but I really don't care. I just keep moving on because people in a WordPress and in any space are like, who the hell is this guy showing up talking about WordPress? Some people embrace it. Other people are like, oh, you don't talk about, caching your code or filtering your data. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to talk to you. Who cares about business? There's no such thing as business in WordPress. Well, clearly there is, pal. You're just not paying attention to it. A little bit of self-doubt, but, with some of the technical stuff of podcasting. But I found it much more enjoyable than blogging. Blogging was something I always tried to train myself because I consider myself a terrible writer. People read it. I wrote a guest post for 80s public beta. People loved it, and so that's a self-doubt. Am I writing smart enough? Do people understand what I'm saying? Which I'm sure they do because they would have told me I was a fool so far. But very little self-doubt on the podcast.
And this is the thing I find about entrepreneurs is that even if there is any kind of self-doubt, the entrepreneurial spirit means that you just do it anyway, and that's the difference between people who make things happen and people who just watch or wonder what happens. Is you might have a little bit of self-doubt, but you just do it anyway.
Right. I don't know if you do. I ask quotes. What my quotes are. My quote to answer that is something my father always said to me: "Where pilgrims die tending to sheep, pioneers die with arrows in their backs." So I'd rather be the pioneer running through the woods, escaping danger, and being found dead with an arrow in my back than living the boring, quiet life.
That's far more interesting, isn't it? So is there anyone that you really want to interview but haven't been able to book yet?
Matt Mullenweg. Just to have him on to talk, about his take on where WordPress is going and the industry of WordPress and GPL and WordPress.org and some of the red tape that I see going on over there. Chris Brogan, just because he's like 40 minutes away from me and I've interviewed everybody around him in his social circle and I'm still kind of just like hey man, come on the show. Hey man, come on the show. Just waiting for him to finally say, okay, I'm finally going to come on the show, just because I want to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah. Did you go to Pressnomics last year in Arizona?
I did not, but I'll be going this year.
Ah, cool. I'll see you there, man.
Nice.
They interviewed Matt Mullenweg on stage, actually.
Yep.
About the whole, about everything. It was really interesting. That's a whole other episode. If you get Matt Mullenweg, please, can you give me a preview link or something? I would pay good money to watch that interview. Matt interviewing Matt on the Matt Report.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that he would just say yes, because maybe he would think that the whole reason why I called it the Matt Report is all because of him. But I don't think he has that much of an ego. But I always thought, boy, that'd be one little in that I would have for him to say yes.
Yeah. So just on the interviewing thing, on the podcasting, how do you put together the template for first of all, how do you find people to interview, and then how do you kind of structure your template for questioning them?
So in the very beginning, I'm at I just published episode 49 today.
Sweet.
I have 3 more, so I'm at episode 52 that's already recorded. I lost 6 others, so I should be around 60, but I'm not. So in the beginning, it was just from people that I was following in WordPress, local people that I knew from local WordPress meetups like WordPress Providence and WordPress Boston. So I was just reaching out to them, and then as my kind of following grew, I would just start reaching out to others. And then, of course, one of my questions is who I interview next, and I ask the guest that question, and then they say, so-and-so, and then I go and knock on their door. So it becomes a sustainable thing. My template is, again, trying to focus a lot more on the business side and how do you do XYZ of your business. How did you find clients? How did you price? How did you build your product? What weaknesses were you able to leverage within WordPress that you have technically? What are your revenue numbers? Try to get a little bit more mixergy on them with getting them to reveal their numbers. And as of today, Trent Lipinski, I just published today, and he came on and shared his numbers. Upwards of 35,000 a month on WordPress theme sales, 20,000 customers, and he was an open book, and he shared all that information with us. So that was pretty good.
Wow, awesome! I'm going to pop some links underneath this video to those episodes on the Matt Report, so you guys can check it out.
You're a better man than me, because I try doing that, and I just can't, when I get all my questions, speaking of templates, I have my questions in front of me, and the big thing in red up top just says, no ums, because I'll sit there and be like, and then I have to tell myself, don't say that. That's one of the things that maybe I kind of mentally fight myself on during these.
Yeah, but it's all practice and all experience and all, So do you send the questions through to your interviewees in advance?
Nope.
You don't? Wow.
No. So when you gave me your questions, it's like, wow, this is great. This is awesome. And maybe I should do that. But then I like to interview. It's really off the cuff, right? So a lot of it, I'll have a few, because I already know going in what kind of entrepreneur they are, where they're at in their business.
Yep.
So it's just my innate interest to ask them questions that I'd like to have the answers to. So I already kind of know going in. Handful of times I didn't do any hard research, or I really didn't have any questions prepared, and then the guest was just not a very good interviewee. They just were uncomfortable, or they just gave real quick 2-word answers, and I was like, oh, you got to talk a little bit more so that we can keep this thing going.
Yeah, I think the reason that I send questions through in advance is because I just want to make sure there's nothing in there that the guest is uncomfortable talking about. When I interviewed Rand Fishkin from Moz, I explored there's this famous story about how he proposed to his wife, and I really wanted to explore that because I think it actually revealed a lot about Rand as a person and as an entrepreneur. But I just want to make sure he was comfortable talking about his personal life in such a public forum. So I think, I think that's why I do it. And I must say, no one's ever come back and said, no, I don't want to talk about that. And also, it doesn't feel to me like their answers are scripted. So it doesn't feel like I'm losing any kind of spontaneity by doing it in advance. But
No, I really do like this. I like this. I like your approach as well.
Cool. Hey, so what's the best thing about having such a visible profile on the internet?
So the best thing is, it's a lot of things actually. It's number one, the podcast is actually very rewarding. I don't monetize it. It's sort of just a handoff to who I am and what I do with Slocum. I have some thoughts of like monetization, but it's really just to help me continue through with actually doing the podcast. Things that, I think that it just proves that I'm doing something really good. But besides that, it's very rewarding because people like yourself and others will send me emails and be like, hey, that was the best, interview I've ever heard. It really opened my eyes to, such and such in my business. I had somebody email me once that they were listening to it right before they went into surgery. And wow. It was just like I was listening about how to like get customers and how I do pricing and not to let them bully me on my pricing, and it made me feel really good that when I came out of surgery I was going to go back at it and work on my business, and things like that are really good. Making the connections in the WordPress world, going to WordCamps and having people say that they listen to the show is tremendous. And on the flip side, it actually helps with business. People are referring their clients or people that they may not have bandwidth for, or clients that don't fit their need, and that's been a tremendous thing for the business as well.
It's great positioning too, isn't it? It's I spoke at WordCamp Melbourne a few months ago, and one of the things I was talking about is make product if you can, because it's really hard to argue with a web designer on price if that web designer makes a product that thousands of other web designers around the world are buying and using for their clients. It's really hard to negotiate on price with that guy because he's obviously at the top of his game. So I think the podcasting, interviewing thing's a really good positioning exercise.
Yeah, it's not to give away the secret sauce, but when it comes to Slocum and when clients approach us and they say, hey, we heard you guys can build a scalable WordPress site. We're kind of looking at some other WordPress shops. What differentiates you? Well, we can talk to them about process. We can talk to them about the stuff that we've built. But then I can also leverage the fact that we have almost 1,700 YouTube subscribers for all of our WordPress shows. We give back to the WordPress community that way. And then they get to look at us and listen to us. Do they like the way we approach? And it's all right out there in the open. I mean, read our blogs, watch our shows, tune into our podcasts. If you don't like us, then you don't like us, and you can find somebody else. But you're right, it's positioning, definitely.
Cool. So let's talk about Slocum for a minute.
Yep.
Slocum is a father and son founding team, so it's you and your dad, right?
That's correct. So we started it 4 years ago. 4 years ago. We got out of the car business 6 years ago. Right. My father was is a pro photographer. So photography was something that I was always doing. Sort of when I was at the tail end of my last career at that ISP, he started doing more, because he got out of the car business, he started doing more photography stuff, and then he started, he did some photography for an e-commerce company, and they were like, hey, we need a site. Do you know how to do that? And he was like, I think my son knows how to do something like that. So then we started to, kind of combine efforts. He would do some photography. I would build a site at night for somebody, and then we went full force, and it was just like, okay, well, take all your clients that you've known in the local business for the last 50 years of running a car dealership. Let's throw them some direct marketing and say, hey, we're starting a web shop, and we can do photography and build sites for you. And then we started recruiting and building a team and getting more and more involved with WordPress, and that's sort of how it spun off.
Wow.
The word Slocum, I don't think I've ever told this on a podcast interview before, is actually resemblance to the Slocum River, which is right down the street from us. Oh. So it's kind of, and then our identity is a swan, and to show strength, beauty, and stuff like that.
So yeah, the swan analogy, I've always thought of, calm and peaceful above the water, and kicking like mad below where you can't see. That's
another great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Any advice for people wanting to go into business with family members?
Whew. That's like a whole other.
That's a whole episode, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. We should start like a psychology podcast.
Yeah.
Talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, go back to earlier in the podcast where I say that I was forced to work when I was, forced to work with air quotes. For those of you
Child
listening,
slave
forced to work
labor.
when I was very young, cleaning cars, and at the time, yeah. So I mean, cleaning cars and being thrown into the family business and doing that kind of stuff, and everything was fine. I was like, hey, I'm making, I just washed 400 cars, and my dad paid me $20. That's amazing, right? And then I was like, I can buy all the comic books I want. But then I started getting into my teenage years, and I was like, I don't want to work. I want to go and hang out with my friends. So things got a little rocky then. But that's growing up, and that's just life.
Yeah.
Going at it with a family, you just have to go in it with an open mind and know that you can still talk to each other at a very human, I guess, lack of a better word, level that you couldn't talk to with a boss, I guess, or if you were in a corporation or something like that. I've tried to start a couple other companies with other co-founders who I was like semi-friends with, but not full-on like best buds, which ended horribly. The business did, but the relationship didn't. But that was different because you just wanted to tell them, like, you're crazy, this isn't going to work, pay attention to where we're going. You can kind of do that when you're with a family. You can kind of fight a little bit more when you're a family and know that you're still family. But it's tough when you just simply don't know the other person that well, because if you do get into an argument, it's going to be a little bit tougher.
So do you and your dad still kind of hang out outside the business and do like fun stuff together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of our favorite things is croquet, which is what we do at when we're having cookouts and stuff. And we're very competitive with one another.
Wow. Awesome.
And we're very competitive within the office too. Depending on what it is we might be selling, whether it be a client or bringing in a new client or coming up with a new product idea that works, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Who's the boss in the office?
Oh boy, he's going to tune into this later. I'm going to say me. I'm going to say me. Only because I think he wants to retire and not do it anymore. So I'll say me.
Cool, awesome. Let's talk about Slocum's themes. When did you know that selling premium themes was an idea worth pursuing?
So this is an interesting story too. So we started doing themes probably a year and a half ago. So we were doing a lot of just off-the-shelf marketing sites for folks that were coming to us looking to build marketing blogs, especially when like the whole Web 2.0, SEO, get leads to your site, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. So we started building a lot of marketing sites, and we had a lot of legal clients, and we had a lot of real estate clients. So then we're like, you know what? Let's focus on like sort of these verticals and build these themes. But what we were doing was we were kind of building out too many different variants all at once while we weren't. So they're getting too specific, right? Where we weren't getting a general kind of canvas laid out there to steal the word of Woothemes. We weren't building a canvas. So we saw a lot of success with the legal theme, a lot of success with the real estate theme. And then we were like, you know what? It's time to build something that we can use for all of our in-house projects that we're building. And then, like you said before, build some kind of starter theme that works for a lot of people. It doesn't do a whole bunch of things all at once. And that's when Minimized was kind of born. And that one's been really good for us. We launched it last month, and we, in the repo, it's about 7,000 downloads so far. We're not really doing much marketing about it yet, but we are releasing a bunch of child themes for it. And we like to think of ourselves as a mix, so we're still focused on services, client services. We like to think that we can build multiple streams of revenue, and themes just adds to that revenue stream.
So how's the marketing process been like for the premium themes? Has that just all been kind of word of mouth, or what kind of growth hacking kind of tips can you give us there?
Yeah, the growth hacking has actually been all the blood, sweat, and tears that we've put into our YouTube channel and all of that content. So WordPress is a funny thing, and I talk about this a lot about like WordPress news and WordPress media. Everybody's like, I don't need WordPress news. I can just get it on Twitter. But then, like when you see sites like WP Daily go down, WP Candy go down, people are like, "Where's my news?" Right? Yeah. I need my news. It's like, well, you said you didn't want it. But so the point of that is, for the last year, it's almost been a year since we've had our YouTube channel up. Like I said, almost 1,700 subscribers. We just put out content 3 times a week, and that's been our marketing vehicle. We don't even really push it that much, and we're just starting to get into building out these other child themes for Minimize, and that's when I think we'll start to do a little bit more of, hey, the show's brought to you by Minimize Pro, and kind of pushing that way. But the reaction that you have in a YouTube channel is tremendous. Like, people are always sending us, like, we get so many contact forms, and I apologize to everybody that sends stuff in. Like, we can't answer them because a lot of people will be like, hey, saw your show, so I got these 3 plugins, and I'm trying to build Facebook, and I want to know how you can kind of configure these, and like, whoa. And let me just hit on one other point. When you ask about what's it like to put yourself out there, we actually had to take our phone number off the website because people were calling us like for like Gravity Forms support. Like, hey, we saw that you that you reviewed Gravity Forms. I have Gravity Forms. I can't figure out how to do this. And people were like calling us up, and like we had phone calls coming in like, do you guys support these plugins? No, we just reviewed them. Well, where can I get support? Where you bought it from? How do I do that? You have to email them. So then I'm like thinking, as the entrepreneur, I'm thinking, I wonder if I just should start a phone shop where people can just call up and I just have all these people and do phone support. No, I shoot myself. That's been the biggest thing for us. It's not easy to do the YouTube stuff because it takes up a lot of time and a lot of content to push out. But as soon as a video goes out, people are like, I want it, I want to consume it. When's your next video coming out? I love it.
It's funny, I mean, because what I'm hearing there is it's just good old-fashioned, consistent content marketing. Yeah.
I go back to the same thing before. It's like what we're comfortable with. And, the other thing about the Matt Report and getting into this was, and here's another thing that people aren't going to like, but I'm a big fan of Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income, all that stuff. Uh-huh. And web marketing, but it always seemed, and even Mixergy, and I've sent this to Andrew countless times. When he interviews somebody and he says, so how did you get started? Well, I went and I slapped together a WordPress site, grabbed somebody to make a plugin for me for $5. Then we built a theme, and that was only $3. And then I went to 99 Designs, had 1,000 people make something for me, paid $50. And then I'm like, okay, so your total cost was $250 for the site that does this, but who's your support? Who's your developer? Where's the thought of scale and growth for your WordPress site? Because I know you're only paying $3 a month for hosting. Yeah. And that's when I was just like, I like this stuff. I like these little growth hack things, but I just don't see myself like doing that. And the only way I know how to sell is just put the stuff out there. Yeah. If you like me, like me. If you don't, you don't. And that's it.
It's funny. I work with some in my consulting business. I work with some professional services companies like accountants and lawyers, and we just don't talk about marketing. We talk about positioning. It's all about positioning. If you position yourself as the trusted expert, for want of a better term, whatever you want to call it, someone like, it's kind of like the medical profession. When was the last time you queried your doctor on his price, his process, his knowledge? Nothing. You don't query him on his business model because he's a doctor.
Right. Yeah. We have to be more like doctors, more like lawyers, and less like your computer repair guy, who shows up and says, I'll fix your computer for $50, because that's, not as hard. They just reinstall Windows and there you go. And it's fixed, right? Because, hey, right. You're going to start.
If you're on a Mac, you don't need a computer repair guy, right?
Right.
Hey, let's get into the elevation round. So for those of you that don't know, we run the world's first business accelerator program designed specifically for WordPress consultants to build an exceptional business. So I'm just going to run through some quick questions here and get some ideas from Matt on how you can elevate as a freelancer or a WordPress consultant. So what's the number one thing any freelancer or consultant needs to know?
Set expectations with your clients. It's like the number one thing. Who you are, what you do, back to what I was saying before, it's what you're capable of. If you're out there buying WordPress themes from me, from Woothemes, and then you're out there calling yourself a web designer and you're never designing anything, don't call yourself a web designer, because the expectation is you're going to be able to customize that and do all this fun stuff. Yeah. And then halfway through, you're going to be like, well, I only charge you $500. And you say, well, I thought you were a web designer. Yeah. Just say you're a consultant. It's okay to be honest.
Exactly. You know, it was, so just to digress for a minute, it was that episode of the Matt Report when I heard you say that. I was in a supermarket and you said, you know, don't call yourself a web designer or a web developer if you're not designing and you're not developing. Just call yourself a web consultant. And I went, right, I have to interview this guy. Like, in my mind, you just went like that when you said that one thing. It's like, don't pretend to be something you're not, and it's okay to just be a WordPress consultant. That's really valuable, being a WordPress consultant.
Yes, you're absolutely right. If I could go back, that's what I would call myself. Yeah. I wouldn't get into the designing of sites if I could do it all over again.
Yeah. What's the best thing you've ever done to find new customers?
Start the podcast, but number one, get out and get into networking. It doesn't have to be WordCamp. Matter of fact, I'd suggest not going to a WordCamp. Go to somewhere else. The third thing, though, that I'm hoping to put a blog post together would actually be Twitter and social media. Everyone says, start a Facebook page and do this, do that. I have some really good results of landing some good-sized projects through Twitter, and that just takes time.
Yep. How do you stop competing on price?
Back to the honesty and setting the expectation. I was on a phone call today with a potential $30,000 sale, and they were just stuck on, we want like the world's best branding, and I just positioned it as, we can do branding for you, but the first thing that our wheelhouse is, what we're really good at, is developing a solution for this technological hurdle you're trying to get over. They just wanted to like look really good, and they wanted the synergy and all this stuff. I said, we could sit here, and I am more than happy to sit there and spin the wheels and designing the best looking whatever this might be. But our focus has to be doing this right, so that it works on mobile devices, and it grows and scales to the amount of users that you want accessing the site. So it's just honesty, setting that expectation. That's what I do. Awesome.
Any tips on writing better proposals to get more conversions?
This is a good one. I've really, every year we try something new with proposals.
Every year?
Every year.
So you mean every week?
Yeah. We try to go every year. We look back and we say what was working, what wasn't. I'll tell you one thing that helps with your proposals. I don't think this is one of your questions, but I have, speaking of family business, my cousin is our operations manager, and he comes from the world of manufacturing, and manufacturing with stuff that had a very low margin. So he counts every single penny. So we track all of our data, how long a client project took, how long the developer took, the designer took. Every bit and piece has been broken down for the last 4 years, so we know what our averages are, and we know how we can price this stuff when a typical client comes along that fits sort of that mold. But we're always trying something new, and now we're going into it with slowing the client down and really taking the time to listen and then speak about, half the conversation should be listening to them, and then the other half is you explaining yourself, your process, and what they can expect.
Listening first is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
Favorite tool or system for CRM?
I like this question. Used to be a diehard Basecamp fan, which I'm sure a lot of people are. But we've, since the beginning of the year, actually it's already September, we switched over to Trello.
Okay.
Trello is great. It's first of all, it's free, and I have a whole spiel about like all of these web services that are like $5 here, $10 here, and then before you know it, you're spending $700 a month on services. That all kind of interconnect with each other. But Trello is free. It's real time. Got a really great mobile app, and we actually took out the whole client process of integrating our clients with. We used to integrate our clients with with Basecamp, and it was just the whole other thing that we had to train them on how to use. So we've switched over to something else to track projects with clients, and it's done strictly through email and Trello, which is Freshdesk, which is the support system that we use. And then we use Trello to manage the projects in-house.
Cool. What's the best way to keep a project and a client on track?
Expectations.
All comes down to expectations.
Expectations. They really have to know what it is that they're gonna be involved with. We at the beginning of every project, we have a blueprint of or a calendar view of when we think our milestones will be hit and the milestones that we request that they hit. The other thing, a great way to keep a client on track. And this is something that a lot of freelancers don't do, is build in your project management as a line item on the proposal. And again, if you're collecting data, you kind of know as a year goes by, like how many hours did I spend project managing that type of client. So when that next type of client comes along that you think is going to be a high-touch client, you'll know that, boy, that last time I had that client, it was like 20 hours of me just dealing with their questions. You build that into the next proposal, and then what we like to do on our calendar view is set the times that we are going to have these stand-up meetings with the client, so that they don't just expect that they can call in any day and say, okay, I want to talk about our project, where we're at. No, it's like we've only allotted 4 meetings. Discovery, launch, and then whatever other ones you want to put in the middle. And then it's a great upsell as well.
My friends, that there is worth the price of admission on its own, given that it's a free podcast. Actually having scheduled meetings with your clients. I had one of our clients on the phone to me the other day saying, how do I get my customers to stop ringing the phone, 2 or 3 times a week asking me questions about the project? I'm like, really easy. Schedule a client meeting with them and tell them, bring this up in the weekly roundup or the weekly meeting.
Yeah. The other thing that you can do too, which works, is have different prices for unscheduled and scheduled work. That seems to work really good with us too. So and this will actually probably goes back to how you close your proposals, is you can say, here's our price. If you accept this, whatever it's, let's say like your rate is $125 an hour. If you scheduled into the pipeline, it's $125 an hour. If you schedule something out of the pipeline, it's $175 an hour. Well, what's the difference? Well, it's like an emergency work or something that you need help with that is just not in our schedule. And if you're trying to elevate yourself, then you're coming off as, okay, you're the real deal, right? You're not messing around. You're not like my cousin's neighbor's kid who comes over to fix my computer. You're trying to help me with my business.
Exactly. And doing that unscheduled work actually takes you away from other projects, which costs you money. So the unscheduled stuff should be priced out more.
Yes, absolutely. It's something that you just don't see coming. Right? It's like you think to yourself like, yep, I can just, all right, I'll unschedule work, no problem. It's $125 an hour. And you don't realize that over the course of a year, how that stacks up, and how you're actually losing money when you're actually doing that, when you're not fulfilling projects that are in the pipeline, and then you're not out there building business and bringing in new business, which could be more profitable.
Yeah. Onto new business. Any ideas for getting referrals from your existing customers?
Keep right off the bat, even if you have one customer, and this is what we did. I remember our first website that we designed. Try to knock it out of the park. If you're just starting out, try to knock it out of the park. Do a great job. Say, can I add you to my newsletter with all my customers, and email them as if they were on a list of 100 people. I do that. We did it with themes. We do it with hosting, and we're going to start to do it with the YouTube stuff. But just stay connected as much as possible. And then if you can help your clients, like all the time my clients are, I'm either sending them a referral from one of my other clients or sending them some kind of tidbit that I see in the news, or fun stuff like their favorite sports teams, right? Like, I know you love the sports team. Football just started in the U.S. being like, hey, hope you get these Patriots tickets this year or something like that, and just doing fun things like that to stay connected all the time.
John Jantsch in the referral engine, the book The Referral Engine, he talks about referring business to your clients, giving referrals is the best way to get them, and adding value as much as you can add value and introduce your network to each other.
Another tip that actually just landed me another good lead the other day was I stay in touch with all the people who have said no to me until they just are like, Matt, I'm never going to do business with you. I've had one person say that to me, by the way. And I don't mean like, every week I'm calling these, but I'll have people that I know that could be really good clients with us, that I know are having problems because they went with another agency based on price. And if you simply just watch their website. Has their website relaunched yet? Nope.
Yep.
Send them an email. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. And I've had people share stuff, and it helps you learn. Like if I don't get a project, I always say, what didn't I do that could improve my process? Because we're always trying to improve.
Yeah.
And I ask. Not everybody answers, but it's definitely you get some good feedback that way.
Awesome. What's the number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself?
The number one thing that I think we do is just getting our voice out there and being as public as possible. I like to say that we're, one of the things I always joke around with is we're not geeks in a basement. We're not, again, back to the computer thing. It's like we're not just like computer people. We just talk honest stuff, and we're as honest as we can be with everything, and just saying that we work hard for the clients and back it up with case studies and testimonials and referrals and stuff like that.
Awesome. Okay, so we're almost in the home straight here. Let's talk about the future for a little bit. What's the future of Slocum Designs look like?
Internet connection.
All right, you got me now?
Got you now.
Cool. All right, we're almost in the home straight here. Let's talk about the future for a second. What does the future of Slocum Designs look like?
Going back to Minimize Pro, the theme, using that as a foundation to build a great, powerful, robust publishing platform with sort of like what 8-Bit was doing with Standard. That's what we kind of like to look at. We're not looking to do a Woothemes, have 150 different themes that serve all needs. We're trying to find our fit with our voice and build something that people are going to love to use. Not everyone will like it, but we'll try our best.
Sweet. And what's the future of the Matt Report?
Future of the Matt Report, maybe getting into, I'm going to launch a forum finally so that people can talk about the different past episodes and have an archive of it. I definitely want things to be more impactful, so that every episode is something that somebody can pick up and go back to revisit and use as like a workbook almost for whatever that episode might be about. So I'm really going to try to, the next 50 episodes, try to do something that's going to really leave an impact every episode.
Nice. Looking forward to that. All right, just before we wrap up, what's the number one piece of advice you would give any entrepreneur trying to build their own business?
This is a good one. You have to simplify your idea and then simplify it again and then simplify it one more time. Because I think as entrepreneurs, we get way too obsessed with everything that we see and all the possibilities. Like, I don't know about you, but I see like one idea like comes across my radar and I can like already see myself selling that company and getting on a boat, heading off to an island. Like, the idea hasn't even gone across the screen yet. Like, it's something I see in Twitter and I'm like, I'm a millionaire. And like, I haven't even, like, nothing has even happened, and you have like a million different ways you can go. So if you can really simplify your idea, it's so much easier if you can, like, when I was blogging, it was like, I'm a web professional, and I was just blogging about everything I could possibly write about. And it's like Facebook, Twitter, computers, Apple, like, no, like no one's ever going to listen to this. And like I tried honing in again, and it's just business marketing. Like, no, everyone's doing that. And then back down again to WordPress. And now I'm like, I might even need to get like more focused in again. I don't know what it's going to be. Just WordPress loops, building a business on WordPress loops. I don't know what that'll be, but definitely hone in and launch. Just get it out there. Get it out there, not in a crappy way. MVP kind of gets me a little irritated because I see a lot of people just putting out kind of garbage stuff just because they think it's just so easy. But you're out there with a lot of competitors. So I'd make something that you can really polish up, something that you're really comfortable with and proud of, that you can launch really fast because time is of the essence.
Awesome. So get specific and get shipping, yeah?
Yep.
Cool.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Just before we wrap up, I'm going to announce the details of this competition where I'm going to give away a Slocum design theme of your choice. Whoever wins the competition will pick up a theme of their choice. And you're also going to pick up a lifetime license of the Video User Manuals plugin, which I'm sure my business partner is going to kill me for. So given that Matt and I are both big fans of the business podcast and we both run business podcasts, what we thought we'd do is get you to leave some comments under this video and tell us the one thing you want to learn from watching and listening to business podcasts. Why do you tune into business podcasts? What's the one thing you're looking for? The one golden nugget? What is the one thing that you want to learn? I'll get Matt to come back in a week's time and have a look through the comments and award the prize to the winner. Sound good?
Sounds tremendous.
Awesome. All right. Where can people reach out to Matt Medeiros?
So you can find me at Matt Report, mattreport.com, at Matt Report on Twitter, and Slocum Studio. You can find us on Twitter, on YouTube, on the website. Go ahead and search for Minimize Pro. That'll also pull us up as well.
Beautiful. And I'm going to put all of those links underneath the video. And finally, to rip off someone else who ripped off someone else's strategy, who would you like me to try and interview? And
Oh, man. You know who you should get on? One of my favorite interviews and one of my most popular interviews is Jose Caballero. I forget which episode it is, but I'll send it to you.
Sweet.
He is the founder of the school, SKOOL, and he used to be the host of This Week in Web Design. Which was on Jason Calacanis' network, This Week in Startups. That dude is tremendous, super smart, and awesome. Not a huge fan of WordPress, but just the knowledge that he'll drop on the audience is tremendous.
Awesome. Well, Jose, I'm coming to get you, courtesy of Matt Medeiros. So
I'll make the connection.
Beautiful. Keep your eyes on your inbox. Hey, Matt Medeiros, I know we had some technical problems today, and thank you for persisting with me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the WP Elevation podcast. And I wish you all the best for Slocum Designs and the Matt Report. And I look forward to listening to your voice while I'm walking my dog, having my coffee around the park in the morning. I hope that's not too weird, man.
No, man, nope, not weird at all. As long as you're, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being our guest here, and I look forward to hearing you again on the Matt Report.
It's been great, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thanks, Matt.